Evening, everyone. Thanks for coming in. Hope everybody's safe and well. We were meant to start at 10 past, but we're actually starting on time. So tonight we have Kat from our American team who's came in to talk about airfield hauntings. Now, this is something I've never ever looked into, so I'm completely in the dark with this one. So it's all down to you, Kat. It's your live. I'll just sit here, listen, and learn, as they say. So whenever you're ready, Doc.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm Tabby Cat Gash, and I'm from the United States team from Paranormal in History. And this evening, I was going to chat about some of the haunted airfields that are here in the United States. And Loki says hello this evening. And wanted to kind of touch on the fact that, airfields, because aircraft have only been in existence since the turn of the early 19th century, airfields themselves don't have quite the reputation as, say, shipyards and that sort of thing. But you've got to figure that over the years, because of wars and the amount of air traffic that has been going on over the years, more and more sightings of hauntings in various different airfields have occurred. And I was just going to touch base, excuse the expression, touch base on a few hauntings that I'm aware of here in the United States that are kind of more common. Most people know about them, at least here in the United States. And the first one is at the Kansas Aviation Museum. It's located in an old airport in the terminal in Kansas. And the paranormal activity is in particular with people walking around, talking, laughing. You hear loudspeaker announcements, and even a gentleman wearing one of the old-fashioned fedora hats. And staff have reported hearing doors slamming. And probably one of the most interesting was that they're hearing over loudspeakers music from the 1940s and 1950s. And that has been a really interesting experience. And I think one of the things that most people would agree with is that any place that has a great deal of human traffic, going in and out, there's a lot of excitement involved, especially when it involves air travel. A lot of people don't like it. Some people are actually scared to death of it. Me personally, I don't even want to be on the water. Aircraft, I'm fine with. Water, not so much. But any place that has a great deal of traffic as far as human activity is concerned, that is generally what ignites a great deal of haunting in the long run because of that energy, because of that excitement and so forth. So you got to figure that many airfields and airports, depending on the actual history of the location, they've got to be haunted in some way or one way or another. Now, another one is what they refer to as the Boneyard in Arizona. And many people have heard of this place because it is where old aircraft go to die. It is absolutely huge. They have a little bit of everything in this location, from early aircraft all the way up to modern aircraft. Some of the things that they've used in NASA and in the Air Force, and also with commercial and private aircraft. And it has been known to have quite a number of hauntings associated with that boneyard, mostly because of the incidents that happened with these various different aircraft over the years. World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, more modern aircraft. There's a lot of death involved in these aircraft. And many people claim that they not only see people in uniform walking around this particular boneyard, but also there are very interesting, unidentified, and unexplainable lights that people see. going through in and out, like people are using flashlights or lanterns or something of that nature. But when the security people go out there, there isn't anyone there. Or they could be inside some of these old aircraft and they will hear voices, they will get touched, and they will hear voices. Sometimes they even talk to, even talk back to them, and they honestly think that they're alive people involved in these. So it's probably one of the most interesting places here in the United States, not only because of the sheer number of aircraft that are in this area, but also for a paranormal investigator, for a medium, or just anyone that's interested in the paranormal. That's probably one of the best places to go to if you want to check it out.
Has there been a lot of films, movie work done there? I think I know the place. I'm sure I've seen it in films and stuff. That boneyard. It's just all old planes flying
Yes,
about.
they've been featured in a number of different documentaries, and probably a lot of people would remember it is because it had a very brief shot in one of the Transformer movies when they went to try and locate this one very old, uh, Transformer. You can actually see part of that boneyard because they had to go out there to try and locate this old Ford
Mhm.
aircraft. So yes, it's been featured in a lot of things. Um, the Davis Monahan Air Force Base in Tucson, Arizona. That's where it's located. So if anybody wants to go and visit it, hey, check it out. It's well worth it. One of these days I'll get out there. The Savannah Hilton Head Airport in Georgia, and this is what I think is interesting. At the end of runway 10/28, the airport was actually built over top of someone's old cemetery, a private cemetery. And there are actually two gravestones that are still right there at the end of that runway. I think it's weird. And two figures of what they figure are probably the owners of that cemetery, Catherine and Richard Dotson. And they're generally seen after sundown. Now that's got to be freaky, to be on an aircraft and suddenly seeing two people standing in front of you on a runway. It's like, put on the brakes. Ah!
Well, I was going to say, especially taking up, I suppose they're coming into land as well to see what they think. It's two people on the runway. That would be scary
Oh
stuff.
yeah, oh yeah, it's got to be. Another is at the most famous Chicago O'Hare International Airport. The American Airlines Flight 191, a McDonnell Douglas DC 10, which was on flight to Los Angeles. And it ended up, let me see, they taxied down the runway and all of a sudden one of the engines lost power. Eventually, the engine actually tore away from the aircraft off the wing, and it ended up, unfortunately, the plane fell, losing control. And all 271 passengers and crew were killed instantly, along with two residents of a nearby trailer park. And a lot of people claim that after this particular crash, people in the neighborhoods were saying that they were awakened to people knocking on their doors and coming up their driveways and um, coming up to them on the streets saying that they were looking for their luggage or they were looking for how to get back on the aircraft. And people were calling the police saying, my God, there's all these strange people, running the neighborhood. Who are these people that are knocking on our doors? They're interrupting our sleep. They're scaring the heck out of our kids, making our dogs bark and everything. And the police finally told them, look, we come out and we investigate. There's nobody there. And once some of the eyewitness people bothered to give the description of some of the people that came to their door, they actually saw these people's uh, faces in the newspaper as being some of the passengers and crew that died on this flight. And they're like, really? I'm seeing the ghost of somebody that died in this crash. And apparently, this continued for a long time, and police were continuously getting calls about it.
So
And
these
some
people
of the neighbors
appeared
even moved out.
these people appeared, obviously they must have appeared solid to the people that lived in the neighbourhood, lived in the street.
Yeah, people didn't realize that they were ghosts. They thought they were real people. I mean, some of them would just come to the door and they'd be banging on the door. And let's face it, most people don't open the doors for strangers. You might call out the window or out the screen door or something. Hey, what is it I can do for you? And you're not
Mm-hmm.
about to open the door to just anybody. But that's exactly what these people did. Most of them were like, hey, sorry, dude, can't help you. And when they continue to bang on the door and, disrupt their family and their pets and everything, they start calling the police. And it wasn't until after everything was, posted in the newspapers and on the news, they're like, that's who I saw. That's who knocked on my door. That's the person I just saw down the street,
So
calling out, where do I get to the airport?
did it eventually stop her?
Well, apparently it's still going on now and then, but it eventually just kind of gradually stopped over a period of time. And some paranormal investigators who actually went out there were curious about it and pretty much came to the conclusion that once the crash was investigated, once everybody on board that had perished had been acknowledged and had been properly buried and so forth, then things gradually stopped altogether. And as I say, most of it occurred shortly after the crash, like maybe later on that evening before everybody got word of what was going on. And it makes sense. When you die that traumatically, your spirit is going to be kind of disconnected and they're confused. So once these people were acknowledged and properly buried, then things pretty well stopped.
Well, they do say, some people have a sudden death or, a traumatic death, and what have you, they find it hard to believe that they're actually dead. They still think they're alive, basically,
Right.
because their death's been that sudden or that violent. That they've not realised that they're actually dead. Andy's saying there's a place in the UK that's haunted. RAF Leeming, North Yorkshire, has many sightings of a crew of a plane wearing World War II clothing walking away from the runway, laughing and joking. They can often be heard at night when the runway is closed. That could be a residual haunting. That one,
Yeah. Yeah,
possibly.
that sounds more residual. The other one was more of an intelligent haunting, but it was extremely brief. It just, but it was still enough to unnerve some of the neighbors in the neighborhood that they moved out. They're like, I can't take this. I'm, I normally didn't believe in ghosts or something, but I'm out of here. I'm not going to stay in this neighborhood if this is going to continue to happen.
I think it's where Andy works. He says it's often replayed. I say that's a residual
Yeah.
haunting for, you know. But I don't think many people would have stayed there after they kind of realised the story behind it. I mean, if somebody knocked on my door at 2 or our door at 2, 3 in the morning, asking where the airport was, you would find it kind of strange. But then after you realise, well, the full kind of story, I think that would freak a lot of people out, and I think a lot of houses would have been up for sale rather quickly, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. There are quite a few of them. And let me see. Then there was
Tabby's disappeared. I've kind of lost Tabby. 2 seconds, folks. This happened to me last year. In fact, I believe it was Wayne Miles who's in the chat that done this to me last year. Left me alone sitting up here because he pressed the wrong button. Was it you, Wayne? It was you, Wayne, wasn't it? It's happened again. And I've been left myself. I don't know anything about airfield hauntings. It's never something I've studied. So I really can't tell you very much on it. I can make up a load of baloney, but then, you know, that's no good to anybody. I'm just hoping that Kat comes back. I think I'm going to need to mail her and find out where she's went. But that's the second time within about 6 months I've been left in my Todd. I got asked to sign the last time, but I wouldn't do that to any man nor beast. Trust me, nobody deserves to be. What I will do while we're waiting, but because she'll be back, Kat will be back. I'll show you an early day Father's Day present, an early Father's Day present I got today from my daughter. Whether you can see that or not. I'm just waiting Kat coming back. So I'm just filling in the time. So I got that today. As anybody who watches out to our lives will realise I'm a massive Elvis fan. So it sits pride of place on my desk. She's back. I'll let her in. Thanks, Shelley, though. Hey, Kat.
Hey there. Sorry about that.
That's all right. I was just going to burst into song.
Oh, I saw your little guitar. That's so cool.
Is it beautiful? There is there. Also, I'm a major Elvis fan. So I thought I'd show it off when I was waiting on you coming back from America.
Okay.
Just don't press any buttons. Don't touch a thing except your bits of paper. You're banned for touching buttons.
Yep, I got my hands off the wire. All I got my hands on is paper. Okay.
Wayne to me last year. Wayne Miles was in the chat. He was on, we're having a chat, and it was one of these situations. It took me a couple of seconds to realise that he'd actually disappeared. You know, and I was sitting there myself, and it must have been a good 10 minutes or something like that, you know, and a couple of people did ask that sign, but thankfully I resisted. Thankfully for them, I resisted. But anyway, you're back with us, doll. So I shall let you carry on. Just don't disappear again, please.
Yeah, I'm gonna try. Well, one of my favorite ghost stories is of the. Okay, that is Eastern Flight 401. Now, a lot of people here in the United States have heard about it, and there was even a film made about it back in the late 1970s called The Flight of 401. And it's probably one of the most interesting because it didn't just also involve ghosts, but it also involved the parts. Now, Eastern Flight 401 on December 29th, 1972, it took off from New York to Miami from JFK Airport. And there were 176 people aboard, and it was on a Lockheed L-1011 aircraft called the Whisper Liner because it was supposed to be extremely quiet in comparison to most airplanes. And at 11:30, you could hear the captain welcome everybody to the city as the plane descended to Miami International Airport. But at 11:42, Flight 401 smashed into the Everglades at 225 miles an hour. The captain on board Flight 401 was Robert Loft. He died in the cockpit not long after the impact. Second officer Don Rico survived the crash but died in the hospital a few days later. Altogether, 111 passengers and crew perished in the crash. Somehow, 75 people managed to survive. And at that time, it was the highest death toll of any single airplane crash in the continental United States. But what was interesting is that for the next almost year and a half to 2 years, a number of Eastern Airlines flight attendants, crew, and even some passengers aboard some of the flights started noticing interesting people aboard their aircraft that really shouldn't have been there. Some of these people were seen briefly, and they would walk through the aircraft and then disappear. They would walk into the cockpit and disappear. They would go into the cargo hold and disappear. Or they would just simply go behind, say, the curtain that divides, first class from coach, and disappear. And some of the people that saw these additional people began to realize, they looked awfully familiar. And then it occurred to them that these people they were seeing were actually some of the flight crew from the ill-fated Flight 401.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't understand how that could be happening. And needless to say, the people that saw these people, especially Captain Robert Loft, they didn't understand how this could be happening because that was not the aircraft that he died on. So what difference did it make? Why were they seeing other people aboard this aircraft or these various different aircraft? As far as they knew, Robert Loft had never flown on some of these other aircraft. Neither had the other co-pilot. So none of it made any sense as to why their apparitions were seen aboard different aircraft. And someone finally made the connection over time that it was not just Eastern Airlines aircraft. They were also L-1011 aircraft. So it wasn't just the airlines, it was the aircraft themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't understand that. Someone finally researched it and found out that the reason for it was that after the flight had crashed, and this is what it looked like, you can see that, there was not a great deal left over on this aircraft. But there was enough of it left that the airlines decided to salvage it. And they ended up using parts from the crashed 401 flight on various different L-1011 aircraft. And they noticed that all of these sightings of all these various different spirits were on board those aircraft that had been using salvageable parts from Flight 401. And then it suddenly started making sense to people that the spirits that were showing up had nothing to do with the people themselves per se. They were attached to the parts of the aircraft. And most people in the paranormal field now, we all realize that, yes, it isn't necessarily a haunted object. Excuse me, hairball. But it can be an object that a spirit themselves are just plain attached to. Like an old car, or your grandfather's attached to an old pocket watch or something. But apparently that's what happened with Flight 401. These salvaged parts put in these additional aircraft, all of these spirits kept showing up in these various different ones. And finally, somebody decided, okay, enough is enough. We're tired of our flight crew getting freaked out. We're tired of our passengers getting freaked out. They started yanking all of these parts off of these aircraft. And after they did that, the hauntings pretty well stopped. But one final thing was that just before the hauntings completely stopped, before all the sightings stopped, one what we now refer to as a flight attendant, but back then they were stewardesses. She saw and knew who Robert Loft was, Captain Loft. And she walked through and she saw him sitting in one of the seats. And he just looked up at her and he said, "There will never be another crash of another L-1011." And sure enough, there never had been. The Eastern Airlines had other aircraft that crashed, or had near misses. But after that, until the L-1011s were no longer in commission, there was never another crash. So it was kind of prophetic. But that to me was one of the most interesting. I mean, after I saw that film, I got the book that a gentleman had written that the film was based on. And that was pretty darn freaky. And that was one thing that really made me realize that it isn't necessarily the haunting itself. It is that they're attached to something because of such trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a terrible crash, a horrible crash, as you saw the picture of. So it made sense. And once they took all those haunted parts off of those aircraft, nobody saw them anymore after that. It was pretty cool.
Maybe, I mean, it's just a theory, do you know? I mean, no doubt a lot of people get, are different theories, but maybe the parts were reused also, they were involved in the initial crash. So to me, they wouldn't be 100% reliable, as they would if they were brand new. So getting put in all these planes, maybe it was the flight crew's way of trying to warn people that these parts could eventually fail.
Yeah, that's a possibility. I have yet to find anybody that has done any extensive investigating. I mean, there have been paranormal investigators that have gone out to the crash site, and it's not exactly accessible. It's pretty nasty out there because it's the Everglades, so it's swampy and full of snakes and all kinds of stuff. But you can kind of be on the outskirts, and you can also go to the location where they had all the parts after the crash and try to do a certain amount of investigation there to maybe try and connect. But let's face it, most mediums, if they really wanted to get answers from, say, Captain Loft or the other flight crew that died, they can do so and maybe ask them, do you know if the reason that you haunted these parts was to warn people, as you said, that maybe these parts weren't safe and should have been taken out of the aircraft to begin with?
Mm-hmm.
But let's face it, if you can recycle a bunch of seats, they're going to do it to save money.
But then if these seats have been involved in a crash or some kind of trauma, they're not going to be 100%. See, I mean, I don't know what the procedure is for taking, crash parts and put them in other planes, whether they get tested to some kind of level or whatever. But I would just imagine that they wouldn't be too safe. And, and maybe that's what the captain meant when he appeared, the last time he appeared and says there won't be another crash. Basically, there won't be another crash because all these parts have been taken away.
Yeah, that makes an awful lot of sense. It really does. Between the book and the film, I don't think a lot of people maybe would have made that connection. But now that you bring it up, it makes a lot of sense. I think it was a warning, plain and simple. And let me see. And okay. Now, a very good friend of mine, Pat McCormick, he is the head of an investigative team called the Ghost Soldiers. He's based right here in Maryland, not very far away from me, and Pat and I do an awful lot of investigating together. And Pat was in the Air Force. And so he has quite a connection to the military, for air bases, for forts. anything that has to do with the military. And because he served in the military, it seems that soldiers and airmen in particular seem to want to communicate with him even more than most. And he was very fortunate, along with a few other people, to have been given special permission to go and investigate one of the, well, it wasn't exactly the most horrendous because of the number of people that died, but it was still pretty horrendous. What most people would recognize is this.
Hindenburg.
Yes, Lakehurst, New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And this happened on May 6, 1937. It was called an LZ 129, and it was attempting to dock at the Naval Air Station, Lakehurst, New Jersey, at a tower. And there had been a lot of thunderstorms and so forth in the area the whole time that they were in the air. The wind was blowing way too hard, and they shouldn't have been attempting to dock, but they did. And it's unfortunate that this big, huge hook that would come out from that tower and grab a hold of the nose of that Zeppelin. There was so much static electricity in the air because of the storms that they're fairly certain that the static electricity from that metal hook hit the metal hook on the nose, sent a spark, and somehow or another went through the system and somehow or another ignited one of the hydrogen tanks.
Mm-hmm.
It's still debatable. There's a lot of people that don't believe that that's what caused it. There's, conspiracy theories to say that it was actually somebody set off an explosion. Even Mythbusters on TV even did a recreation of the Hindenburg disaster to see what would cause it to not only ignite the way it did, but to be destroyed that quickly and so forth. And they kind of came to the conclusion that the only thing that could have done it would have been a possible rupture in one of the hydrogen tanks that was ignited by a single spark from the static electricity. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, Pat and his friends went out to Lakehurst, and they were given full access to the airfield, including what they refer to as Hangar 1, which is where the Hindenburg um, was placed. Now, this is a very recent. Um, it's been rebuilt and so forth, but you can see how big that thing is.
Mm-hmm.
And he and his investigative team went inside, and they had quite a number of sightings while they were in there. They saw shadow people. They heard people talking. They heard people laughing. They heard music. And there was one person in particular that they thought was perhaps a doctor of some sort. And this doctor wasn't a very nice person and had a tendency to mess with them the whole time they were there. And there was also a petty officer that had died in that location some years before. And this petty officer apparently had been attacked by one of the local guard dogs at some point, and he somehow or another overpowered this dog. And during an EVP, he was actually bragging about taking this dog down. How he was so good that he was able to take down one of these guard dogs all by himself. And Pat was saying that all of these people that are still stationed there have had so many stories about the hangar, about the entire airbase, but Hangar 1 in particular, because that's where the Hindenburg had been a number of times when it had arrived. But they
Mm-hmm.
say that they could actually see people in 1930s clothing running across the airfield. They've heard shouting. They've heard the sound of very old vehicles going across the airfield. They've smelled smoke when there shouldn't have been. So there are all kinds of sightings on this particular level. And one of the last reports that I have is from another friend of mine. And that is from this is out in Oklahoma. And let's see. This is at the Frederick Army Field in Frederick, Oklahoma. And apparently, and the gentleman's name is Mike Ricksecker, by the way. He's also my publisher through Haunted Road Media. And the Frederick Army Airfield was built in 1943 and became the newest advanced flying school for the Central Flying Training Center during World War II. So it was one of the topmost airports in the United States for training pilots to go into combat. So you got to figure this place was extremely active with just live flurry of activity on a regular basis. And he said there's only 2 buildings that remain that were initially occupied by World War II airborne demonstration teams. And they heard disembodied voices, shadows going around everywhere. They said they were always hearing distant voices, but not necessarily anything that they could actually hear. They ended up going on board one of the C-47 transport aircraft, and they did an EVP session, and they said that for the longest time they didn't get anything until Mike mentioned that he too had been in the Air Force. And right after that, they started getting all kinds of activity. The K2s were going off, the EMF detectors were going off. They made mention in some of the EVPs about Mike and so forth. And he's going to be going back, I'm sure, and I'll get other reports on that.
Mm-hmm.
But airfields and airports, again, being so active with human activity and with everything that's happened throughout history, the different wars, the different crashes, any place and everything has got to be haunted in some form or another, whether it's here in the United States, whether it's there in the UK. And I'm sure that there in the UK, especially along the coast where they had a number of air bases that had U.S. pilots and everything, those airports and airfields have got to be seriously haunted with all of the deaths, with all of the pilots that never came back, but made those air bases their home. So
we can look at it. Justin's got a question for you, Kat.
Yes.
Come back to the air bases.
Pilot speaking, saying about how do you think spirits create sound with no physical mass? That has been a question that a lot of people have been wondering about. The fact that once our physical bodies are gone, how can we manipulate sound? Because it's the muscle in here that causes vibration for us to speak. And it's our lips that form the words and so forth. There's a lot of speculation that instead of actually creating a sound through a physical, they're creating the sound through the airwaves, the same way that we're listening to you or you're listening to us right now. It's through the airwaves. It's going through a signal. And after all, how is it that we were able to hear people halfway across the world through the Marconi radio when it wasn't even on a wire? You know, it was traveling through the air in a signal somehow. Or how is it that we're able to talk to each other through a Morse code through the old telegraph, tapping telegraph years ago, when all that is an electrical signal. How is it that we're able to talk to each other when you take two Dixie cups and a fishing wire? It's the same thing. It's a vibration that goes through on this little wire. So a lot of people believe that that's how spirits are able to produce a sound, is not necessarily through the vibration in an actual physical organ, but being able to do it on an airwave of some sort. And there's also some people that believe that we hear spirits not because we hear what they're saying through a voice box, but we're hearing it mentally, that they're communicating to us mentally. So for some of us, like myself, who's a medium, sometimes when I hear spirits, and other people don't, people wonder, well, how is it that you're able to hear them, but we can't? That might well be that they're communicating with me through some form of telepathy. That might well be.
Or a frequency. I always say the dog whistle theory.
Yep.
The dog whistle. I always say that kind of theory. Justin's part of our English team, by the way, Kat. You probably not met him yet. He started with us about 2 weeks ago or something. That's who Justin is, asked the question. He's part of English. I'm on fire tonight. He's part of our English team. But I always say the kind of dog whistle theory. As the mediums, etc., can hear a different vibration. We can hear.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I can actually hear dog whistles sometimes. If I'm close enough to one, my hearing is so acute that, I can sometimes hear it, and it drives me nuts. I can be in an elevator, and the sound of an elevator, it just gets on my nerves. Or I can be in a quiet room with the old fluorescent light fixtures, and that humming sound that comes from the I forget what the thing is called, but anyway, I can hear fluorescent lights, and it just gets on my nerves like fingernails on a blackboard. My hearing is that acute. So yeah, I think it's definitely on a. How is it that we're able to sometimes not hear exactly what it is on an EVP, but once we take it and put it through a an analyzer for the decibels, and you change the decibels on your audio clip, and suddenly you can hear it as plain as day. When before all you heard was blah, 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 but you change the decibel setting on your audio clip, and you can hear it.
Yeah,
and it's because we don't hear every single frequency. The humans can't, not as a rule, but yet our equipment is capable of being able to do it. Or why is it that they will sometimes say something, we hear it with our ears, but it doesn't get picked up on the audio? Or why is it that we don't hear it, but it's picked up on the audio?
Well, funny is that because about 2-3 weeks ago we did the Edinburgh Vaults. Great knowledge, Kat. There you go.
Thank you.
Big compliment for you. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, we did the Edinburgh Vaults. It was Sarah, Shelley, Sam, Laura, and Jamie Chistorfin was there, and Sarah's brother. But there was Shelley, Laura, myself, and Sarah, and one of the vaults doing an investigation. Now, all our footage never worked out for whatever reason. Audio, video, it never worked. We can't explain it. But
that happens.
Happens
all the time.
We distinctly heard a voice saying the word why. We'd asked, I can't remember how it happened. I think we asked in a necrophonic why, but then we heard a disembodied voice, as we call it, just up to the left is saying why, a male voice, and there was nobody there. And there was 3-4 heard it, and we all looked up at the same time to see if somebody was standing there, and there was nobody there, but we definitely heard the word "why," and that's all we heard. We can't, we're not saying again it's paranormal, but we know before he's heard it, we had a look about, there was nobody else there. Jamie and Sam were off filming in another bit with Sarah's brother. They were nowhere near where we were, but it came just for the left-hand corner of that particular room we were in. And we can't explain it. But we got home, looked at the video, none of it worked out. Now, Shelley and Laura had been taking photographs, and I was standing beside them when they were taking them. And none of them worked out, and with a video, an audio recorder as well, listened back to that, and none of that worked, the whole lot. So the only footage we had was a couple of photographs on my phone. We got photographs outside this particular room, but inside this room, nothing worked. And about 2 or 3 days later, one of the guys, another team we work with up here, he phoned me and he said, "I just saw your post saying that nothing worked." He says, "What vaults was it you were in?" So I told him what he says, "That's the exact same happened to us in the vaults. We done an investigation and nothing worked, and we can't explain it." So that
seems to be normal, though, Scott. Anybody that does investigations on a regular basis, I think will tell you that you go into a location that is supposed to be extremely active. Well, I take that back, because there's sometimes you can go into a place that isn't really known for a lot of activity, but still, and you go in there with fresh batteries in your equipment, or even a brand new piece of equipment that you've tested out and it's been working fine. You get in there and it's, within minutes, it's gone, it's dead. And that happens quite often. I was with a team one time, and we were investigating a place right here in my own hometown. And every one of us went to get all of our equipment out of our bags. One by one, everybody was saying, "Oh man, my batteries are dead." "Yep, mine's dead too." "Yep, this one's gone. Fresh batteries, forget it. Go get more batteries, try it again." And I had a full spectrum camera that I had set up on the second floor on a tripod. And I had the video running. And it had something like an hour's worth of video that it could have been using. And we're downstairs and we hear footsteps on the wood floor above us, going from one side of the location to the other. And I was thinking, yes, I got it on my camera, because that camera was focused on that area. I checked it out when I got downstairs, and I'll be darned if that thing didn't turn itself off 2 minutes before we started hearing the footsteps. It turned itself off 2 minutes before the footsteps started. And I thought, well, whoever it was that was up there did not want to be seen. It was okay for us to hear him, because it was definitely a male, but he refused to let me have him on camera. And that was so frustrating, because it had taken everything prior to that point. It still had almost a half hour of video to go. Shut itself off. Doggone it. Whoever you were, that wasn't fair.
It's really frustrating and annoying. I mean, that day we all went through the vaults and what have you, and and to come back with nothing except a couple of photographs on a phone,
you got the experience, though. That's what counts. You got the experience.
I mean, it happened to me before last year during a break in lockdown. I went out myself. I went to 3 locations up here. I went to a Drossing Castle, Kilwinning Abbey, and Eglinton Park, and I filmed in the 3 locations. The Abbey did not work out. The other 2 were fine. The Abbey didn't work, so I went back myself again one night, late at night, to the Abbey. It's an old ruin there, an Abbey. There's a graveyard there as well, and I just had a wander around myself, filmed it, and it never worked. That's twice I've been to the Abbey, and it's not worked. But the first time I went, the other two locations did work, but I filmed the Abbey in the middle kind of thing, and that never turned out. And I can't explain that why it never worked. The camera was turned on, and there was nothing, absolutely nothing.
I've known a couple of people to go to some of these locations, especially places that were like more historical, that may have had something to do with, a very large event. Like, just take for instance, I know somebody that did an investigation of another World War II airfield. Well, it's still in use today, but it was used quite a bit during World War II. And when they went in there, they were using, a more modern little handheld audio recorder. And they got on the recorder a voice saying, "Small radio," like just a matter of fact, "Small radio." And they were tickled about it, and they said, "No, it's not a radio, it's a recorder." And back then, yeah, they had a certain amount of recording equipment, but it was not, the best in the world. You could do a certain, but it had to be like in a broadcasting studio or something like that in order to do it. So whoever it was that was talking to them didn't even recognize the fact that this was a recorder. They thought it was a small radio. So they went back, I think a couple of years later, and this time they took a recorder with them with some music, 1940s music in it. And they played it while they were in there. And sure enough, they got an EVP that said, I think something like, "I love to dance," type of thing. And me personally, I think that's pretty accurate, because in order to use, like trigger objects, and using something like that at an old airfield where they would recognize old music and everything. I did that one time. I recorded a whole bunch of music through the ages from the Civil War all the way up until the 50s, and went to Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in Western West Virginia. And I was going through the area that was known for the residences for the staff, the doctors and the staff, which is basically on the fourth floor. So I'm walking around, and I've got it on kind of low because I didn't want to disturb anybody else, but I'm playing all of this various different music. And I go into this one room with another person, and she and I, both picked up on, a spirit that was in there, and thought, okay, well, we're not really getting any activity, no EVPs or anything. I turned off the music. And then as soon as we walked away and started to walk down the hallway, the door to the closet in that room came slamming open, just with a big wham. So we walked back in the room and said, okay, we know you're in here. Did you slam the door because you were happy that we were leaving, or did you slam the door to get our attention? So just assuming that they were doing it to get our attention, I turned on the music again. And it only had like maybe 30-second clips, so it wasn't a whole song. And it got to Elvis Presley, Hound Dog by Elvis Presley. And all of a sudden, the door just goes bam, with, about 6 inches up against the wall. And I'm like, oh, so you don't like Elvis, huh? And then we heard a loud thump on the opposite side of the wall. And I thought, okay, that's fine. So as we decided to go ahead and walk out, and I told the person I was with, I said, just as an experiment, I want to see whether or not it was true. If they didn't like Elvis Presley, or maybe they just wanted us out of the room. So I walked back over, I turned on Elvis Presley again. Sure enough, bam! So, okay, you don't like Elvis. No, no problem, no problem.
Oh, yeah. Obviously, they never had much taste in it.
No, really not. I mean, not everybody likes Elvis, but, I had to make sure. I wanted to confirm it. I wanted an affirmation of why they needed to sure that they didn't like it. That's one of the stories that's in my book, by the way.
it's funny. You need to tell me what your book's called, actually.
It is called My Life Amidst the Paranormal.
I'm going to write that down.
Let me see. Let me grab it real quick. Oops. I'll get my troll out of the way.
I missed the paranormal. Go ahead.
My Life Amidst the Paranormal. And it was published through Haunted Road Media. It's not in print at the moment, but if anybody wants a copy of it through me, you can get in touch with Scott and give him your address and everything. They're $10. I'll sign it and send it on to you. And I'm in the process of making my second one, by the way.
Just let us know, folks, if you want a copy of it. I just hear talk about the music reaction. We were out on an investigation last Wednesday or Thursday, and the first part of it was quite quiet. We're doing it Alloway Kirk. I mean, you probably heard of Tam O'Shanter, Robert Burns, Tam O'Shanter. Well, this is the place we were at Alloway Kirk.
Hold on a sec. What? No, you got to leave.
She's left us again. No, she's back.
Very persistent cat. That was.
Oh, we've got two of them.
I've got 9.
I tend to kick them out of the room now when we're doing a live, but
it would get too warm in here if I were to close the door. That's my problem.
I was Alloway Kirk is the location that inspired Robert Burns to write Tam O'Shanter. You know about the church and the witches chasing them over the Brigadoon, what have you. Well, we've been there 3 times, I think. And we went there last week, and the first part of it was pretty quiet. There was nothing. So what Shelley did was she recited a bit of Burns' poetry. And then after that, things just seemed to happen. Cat balls were going off. We got footage of cat balls. We'd set the cat balls on an iron railing. The first time we came off, one of them flew off the railing. We got another 3 caps of them falling off the railing. The meter was lighting up. Now, I've been told there's a young girl there called Rebecca who's took it and a bit of shine to me. She sees me as a father figure. The previous time I was there, I could feel there was somebody with me. And my right hand was roasting, left hand was freezing. So I moved to another bit of the kirkyard where the girls were. And again, right hand roasting, left hand freezing. Last week we were there, I was told Rebecca was with me again, and that hand was roasting again. I can't explain that. I know there's
that doesn't make any sense.
Scientific theories, you know, about body heat and stuff. But that hand to be, not red hot, but really, really warm, and 3 different parts of that location on 2 different occasions. I don't know.
I wonder if somebody was burned or maybe died of a fever or something like that, and that's the heat that you're feeling.
Well, as a girl, her name's Teresa. She was in the chat on both occasions. She's a medium. She told me about this girl Rebecca. We first met Teresa one night when Shelley and I went out, and she gave us information on a location we were at that she could never have known because we didn't even know it. We were at the pitch black in the middle of a field, and Teresa told us stuff that turned out later to be true. And it was something that told me about Rebecca, and she's always my right-hand side. So as always, we never state anything as paranormal, but I know what I felt, and I'm not one of these BSers, come on and say, oh, this happened to me and that happened to me. If nothing happens and we say nothing happened, But I did say to the other folk that were there, look, feel that hand and feel that hand. She says, aye, that's roasting, that's freezing. So,
Yeah.
but we're getting back. We're getting back this Saturday. Justin, who asked you that question, Kat, is coming up. He's down south. He's coming up to England with you're familiar with the Pendle Witch blog, Thomas Broad. We were doing. Thomas is coming up as well on Saturday, and we're getting back to this location to try and validate everything that we got last week.
Yeah.
We're going to have 6 cameras at all different angles showing everything.
Something should show up. Something's bound to show up with all that much equipment.
Well, we're going to see what we get. I mean, luckily, when the cat ball flew off the first time, well, unluckily, I turned my phone just that wee fraction to my left, but you still see the ball, coming off, but not from the railing, if that makes sense. It's just a fraction away from the railing. But luckily, Shelley had her camera on facing the railing. She was just sitting. So that shows that there was nobody, on the other side of the railings. And the railings are solid. But so we're going to get back on Saturday and we're going to test it out. Because I think that's Justin there. He'll be up on Saturday. Lord help us all. That's all I can say. SLSE diet and K2s, we're going to have it covered.
You got an SLS unit too. That's cool. Yeah. There's some people that don't really think much of the SLS unit. I had never really had any experience with it until a few years ago. I used to investigate with a local group out of Pennsylvania, and they ended up with an SLS unit and never been familiar with it. I didn't know what to expect about it, but we were at a location and I knew that there was a particular spirit that was in this location and pointed it out to the other person. And I said, well, there's a spirit sitting over here in these chairs. And he panned the SLS unit over, and sure enough, you could see somebody sitting in the chairs. And I said, well, they're getting up. I couldn't see the SLS. They weren't showing it to me. I only saw it after it had been recorded. But I told them, I said, they got up and they're now walking in between the seats. And now they're telling me they're tired of sleep.
You're glitching really bad, Cat. And now she's froze. You know I'm only kidding, Justin. You know I'm only kidding. Cat seems to have froze on us. Yeah, that she's really good at sitting still. I think she's froze. Hi Ronald, buddy, how you doing? We're having a wee bit of bother with Cat from Maryland. She keeps freezing. She might not be aware that she's froze. So I'll need to send her a wee. And this second time one live, she's disappeared and left me. No, she's gone. She done it about 10 minutes into the live. No, she's done it. Why do people always keep leaving me? I don't think I smell that bad. I don't think my jokes are that bad. You just tell me pee off and leave me. Hopefully she'll be back. I hope you enjoyed the airfield. Here she's back again. She's maybe back again. There she's there.
Yeah, am I back?
You're back, yeah. You're back. We never heard a word of what you said, Kat, because you totally froze and then you disappeared.
Oh,
It's the
goodness.
bottom effect.
Okay. No, I was just saying that after they played back the SLS unit for me, I had told them that this person was tired and wanted to go to sleep. And the person holding the SLS unit was laughing, and I didn't understand why. But then after they showed me what was on the SLS, when I told them that this spirit said, "Well, you know, it's late. It's going on 11 o'clock. I'm tired. I want to go lay down, go to sleep." The SLS unit actually showed this figure laying down across a couple of the seats. I'm like,
Right.
you know, to me, that's just validation for what I can already pick up. So there are some people that don't think the SLS unit is worth much because it can give you some false readings. I know that. But for me, the times that I've been around people that have been using them that I trust, for me as a medium, it's kind of validation when I can say, hey, well, look, you know, there's somebody standing over there and they're reaching out to you and trying to touch your hand or, you know, something like that. And the SLS unit is actually showing somebody reaching out and trying to touch somebody's hand. So it's a matter of the kind of unit I think you're using and whether or not you trust the person that's behind it. You know, the same way that you've got to just figure it out for yourself when you're on an investigation. Who it is that you're with and who do you trust, you know, for the information.
Hey, Kathy, though. I mean, as you say, a lot of people don't put faith in it, but it's the same with every gadget. Yet, you know, it's two sides of the coin as always. Some people are for them, some people are against them. I know, you know, like why, as we Mark Edgerton on the other night, he's been an investigator for 40 years, and he said the same thing. You know, for instance, your phone, you can turn your phone off but you're still going to get with this Wi-Fi everywhere. Doesn't matter where you are. So you're still going to get some kind of signal for somewhere. So, you know, there is good and bad points. I'm not a big tech guy, as I've said all along. Half of them I don't know how to use. You know, maybe I should be embarrassed about that, doing what we do, but I'm not. It's just, I've never been into tech. It's just never been my thing. I think the best tool you have is your own senses.
Yeah.
A grid pen can tell you, EVP, a K2 meter can light up and what have you. But the only true way to know if you're getting something is if you feel it yourself. If you feel somebody beside you, somebody in front of you, or whatever, then you know yourself. Obviously, if you're doing a live, you can't, you know, people can only take your word for it. You know, I'm feeling this person beside me. But at the end of the day, we don't BS. I know there is channels out there that do, but we don't BS. But I mean, I like the laser pen because it's plain and it's simple. If something breaks the lights, it shows up.
Yeah. I've been in a couple of locations with a laser grid, and it wasn't my laser grid, it was somebody else's, but we were on a Civil War battlefield, and they turned this thing on in a location that was a field hospital, you know, during the war. They turned this thing on, and suddenly I got a Confederate soldier that said, "They're shooting at us." And I'm like, no, 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 no. This guy isn't shooting at you. You know, it's their lights. You know, it's not a gun flare or anything. They're not shooting at you. It's okay. But they didn't know what this thing was. They thought for sure that this light coming out was a gun flare. And I'm like, oh, they're shooting at us. So I had to let the other person know, look, they're not going to really do much with the laser grid because they don't understand it. A couple of them were even afraid of it, so don't even bother. And once he turned off the laser grid, hey, everything was cool. You know, they were fine. But it just scared them because they thought it was something that, you know, they could relate to.
Well, what do you think of that? Because you've got to remember, you know, these spirits, you know, maybe 16th, 17th century, obviously didn't have other bits and pieces back then. And how can you put it? The easiest way to put it is 17th century spirit isn't going to understand what a K2 meter is.
Mm-mm.
You know, because they're no sat down and studied it, you know, let's face it. So people saying to them it's just it's a box, it's a bit of plastic, whatever you want to call it, you know, they don't understand the ins and outs of it. Well, what do you think, what's your thoughts on the cat balls?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
What do you think using cat balls?
I guess I'm not quite. I'm sorry, Scott. I'm still not quite understanding the term. Maybe we've got a different term for it. I'm not sure.
Give me 2 seconds. Talk amongst yourselves and I'll show you what I mean. It's a cat ball. Talk amongst yourselves.
No. Well, folks, I think a lot of the things that I've learned over the years as a medium is that, as Scott pointed out, the best thing that you need to rely on are your own senses. And regardless of who you're with, investigating, who you've got around you, the best piece of equipment is what you have inside your eyes, your ears, your nose, and your sense of touch. All of that you rely on. That's your equipment. That's your main equipment. Everything else is secondary. You know, a K2 meter, a millimeter, an EMF detector. Any of those things can be a great backup. They can be a great validator for what you are already picking up on. But don't entirely rely on them because they can be manipulated, as Scott said, by other outside sources. Especially if somebody goes into a location and either neglects to turn their phone off or at least put it on some form of airplane mode, you would be surprised at how many false readings that can give when somebody has left their phone in the other room. They've just turned the sound down and they get a text message and suddenly the K2 goes off and everybody's freaking out. Oh, somebody's trying to communicate. But no, it's probably because somebody's getting a text in the other room on the phone that they forgot to turn off. So you have to just take all those precautions and everything, that there's no contamination involved with outside sources of electronics. Electronics are easily manipulated. You've got to be careful about it.
Yeah, Kathy says use her thermometer. Can ask Spirit to take the numbers up for yes and doubt. I've never actually thought of doing that, Kathy. That's a good idea. Have you ever done that, Kat?
I haven't used an actual thermometer, but I do have a temperature gauge on my EMF detector and have asked them to manipulate and had them do it. So I guess that's somewhat the same thing, but I guess with a thermometer, like the old mercury style thermometers, let's face it, the only way that those can be manipulated is to actually touch them, you know, to hold on to them, to cause the mercury to, you know, to heat up or whatever. That would be an interesting thing. I've got one of those old mercury thermometers. I might want to give that a try. Thanks for the suggestion.
Thanks, Kathy. I'd never thought of doing that, but that is a good idea. That's a cat ball.
No. The closest thing I've ever done to using something like that, I've gotten a ping pong ball and taken the laser grid, pointed it onto the ping pong ball and let it glow and watch it move around. You know, if the spirit wants to move it, it'll move it out of the laser grid light. No, my cats don't fool with that. They like feathers and stuff like that.
Well, we use them.
That would be an interesting thing.
We had 3, but one went on the blink and I kind of launched it somewhere. I don't know, it's in Scotland somewhere. I know, it was one of the lose your temper moments. You think, you know, one of them, and then you realise, oh, wait a minute, I threw that away and I shouldn't have. But by that time it's dark and you can't, there's no chance of finding it. Cat toys with bells on also work. You never think of these things, do you? But basically, so we had two of these, and we took one. Shelley was against this railing, and we had one on either side of Shelley, and one of them. It's on our Facebook. Some of the footage is on Facebook. Flew off the railing. Now, as you can hear, they're quite solid.
You were saying about throwing one.
They're quite solid.
Two down. Two down.
We have now one cat ball that we use. You know what I mean? But one of our friends had come up with a theory that when Shelley moved, because she was on the railing, basically she'd moved the railing slightly back. And when she moved again, the railing kind of pinged, and this moved the cat ball, which is possible, but these railings are cast iron and are into the ground. And if that had been the case, the other cat ball on the other side of Shelley would have pinged off or would have moved as well. But the other cat ball just stayed static. It didn't budge. It never moved. Just this one moved. You know, that's part of the reason we're going back on Saturday to really look at these railings and, you know, test that theory out. Because if somebody makes a suggestion, I think, you know, if it's in your power and your means to go and try it out, then you need to try it. You need to look at it and say, look, we tried it. We listened to what you said. We tried it. As you can see, it didn't work. She says, I knew I couldn't have moved the railing to cause that force. That's Shelley's with us.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like
it's a theory, but, you know, if that theory was right, then why didn't the other cat ball move as well? Why did one just... That wasn't me, that's a cat motor, but did you hear that?
Yeah.
That's a motorbike outside. That was not me.
I was just going to say, I'm not going to say a word.
That was not me. I'll get a window open because it's still 18 degrees here, which is really warm for Scotland this time of night. I would stand up and show you my shorts to prove it's warm, but nobody should be subject to that, you know. I see Kathy, she heard it. Thank you, Kathy. She's my witness. It wasn't, because we live on a main road. So you get little idiots at this time of night. So I thought it was your stomach, Scott. No, it was a motorbike. Look, you see, I'll show you. See, I've got shorts on, as you can see, right? So I'll get the window open. In the name of God. So as I say, you know, you say if somebody gives you a theory, and if you can, then you need to go and test it out. You know, just to show, right? As I say, we've listened to you. We went and tried that out. That's not what happened. And that's the other reason we're going to have about 6 cameras on this one spot on Saturday. But Shelley says she couldn't have moved the railings because this thing actually does fly off the railing. And it happened another 3 times, I think. Was it 3 times, Shelley? And then the last time, the 2 cat balls came off within a millisecond of each other. Just came off. We did say to, I think it was Rebecca we were talking to, if that's you, if you're still there, make something happen, make the meter light up or something. And just after that, the 2 balls came off and landed in a perfect line with each other. But we've got it all on, we got it all on camera, it's all on Facebook, if anybody wants to give it a look. But the first cat ball comes off an hour and 24 seconds into the live. So if you go at about an hour and 20 seconds, then watch it.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and watch it again. I watched it the first time, but I wasn't entirely sure what it was that I was supposed to be seeing. But I'll definitely go back and rewatch that.
Some answers with cat balls if I can send. I can. Send us your face, Kathy, by all means. Yep. You can send it to me on Messenger. No, that's not a. I'll see if I've got you in Messenger. I think I do. And you can send us that. But Kat. So if you look at an hour and 20 seconds, just for there, just right after Shelley, it's seconds after Shelley finishes reading her first poem. The last two were two balls of yeah. It was possibly it was the one, you know. But the first one, no, definitely wasn't the one. The K2 meter fell off as well. I wasn't there. It's on the footage. I wasn't there when this happened. The K2 meter fell off, and there is a fair wee bit of weight in them. So whether the wind would be capable of blowing that off a fence, because you know it wasn't a force 10 gale or anything. There was a bit of wind, but it wasn't that strong. To actually blow one of these things off is, you know, debatable.
Yeah. Too many things to be a coincidence. I mean, when you have that many things happen all at once, or if something happens more than once in, you know, short succession, you know, you have to look at possibilities. But when you have things happen in a row, one right after another, you know, you got to think, well, okay, there's a correlation here. You know, there's got to be something to it. You can't dismiss everything. You've got to look for possibilities. That's for sure. You can't automatically assume that something is paranormal. But once you've ruled out the possibility that it wasn't a natural cause, then yeah, you can do an experiment and try it again and see if it happens again, see if you get a response and so forth. If you do, great. If you don't, it doesn't necessarily mean that just because the second time you tried it, you know, there isn't a spirit or there isn't any activity. It just might be that the spirit is saying, okay, that's it. I'm out of here. I've had that. But, you know, they get tired. They don't want to communicate anymore, and they just say to heck with it and end the conversation.
They're no performing monkeys. Do you know what I mean? And when the next morning Sarah came up with the idea, we did try an experiment in here. What we did was we got a wee small table and we put two balls on the table and we got a hairdryer and put it on full to see what would happen to the balls. And the first time the balls never moved, but then one of them rolled off, and it rolled off and fell straight down. You know, it didn't travel any distance. So, you know, that makes me think, you know, was it the wind? Was it another wind? I don't think, because it was a totally different reaction that we got down there. And that was a hairdryer on full blast, about 5 or 6 inches behind these things. And they're quite solid, as you heard, you know.
Yeah.
But we'll see on Saturday. See, we're down there with 6 cameras and all sorts of bits and pieces. And we're going to try and, you know, recreate the last week's investigation as best we can and see what happens. But there's always going to be doubt. There's always going to be skeptics, you know, no matter how much equipment you have on one spot, there's always going to be people. And it's just, you know, no offense to them. It's just the way they are. It's there. You know, they're skeptical. They maybe don't believe in the paranormal, or they would need to see something really major, you know, before they would start to say, right, well, okay, I can't explain that one. Maybe there is something, you know.
You have to respect everyone's viewpoints. Everyone's viewpoints.
Yeah, that's what I say. People, guests, you know, any new guests that are coming on, I always speak to them first before, and I say, look, we're open to, because we've had a couple of guests on, and prior to them coming on, they says, well, you know, the paranormal, I don't know. I say, look, you know, whoever comes on our channel, they're welcome, you know, express your point of view. It might not be the same as ours. Life would be boring if we all agreed. You know, it would be a pretty boring world if everybody agreed at the same time. but people have come on, and we might not agree with their point of view, but we respect it the same as we'd like their point of view respected. You know, they might be wrong, they might be right. Who knows? That's the thing about the paranormal. You don't know. You're always looking for that answer for that question. You know, that capture that gives you. I don't think we'll ever get 100% proof. That's why there's not a lot of genuine evidence out there, as it's all mocked as they wasn't there.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've shown people pictures of things that I absolutely cannot explain. Not even close could I explain. And there was one particular picture that I took at an old brewery that is a ball of light. And I sent it off to somebody that does photography for a living. They work for a company, for a production company, that's all they do is use photography and graphics and everything for commercials and for TV shows and everything. And I sent this photograph to this person, and they looked at it and they said, that's not a flashlight. It's not a candle. It's not, a light dangling from someplace. This thing has its own internal light, and it's traveling because it's leaving a tail. It looked like a comet or an asteroid or a meteor or something, because it was actually giving off its own light source and leaving a tail as it was moving. And they had no clue what it was. And they said, well, could it have been ball lightning? And I said, indoors? No, it was not ball lightning indoors. But it showed up in two different photographs. And that's what the strange part was. It showed up starting to come across the room. And this person was walking, and they walked into my shot, which made me mad. They walked into the shot and kept on walking past. I had to back up to let this person pass, and I took another photo. So you could see this thing starting to move across the room, and it got there just in time for this person, and it stopped. And once this person walked on, it continued on. It was like it stopped for this person to walk. And that was so weird. But this person said, yeah, it had its own light source. It was not something that could have been faked. And I still have people look at it and say, no, it's just a flashlight. It's just a candle. Sorry, I didn't see it with my eyes. There was no candles, no flashlights, no nothing in that area. But again, like you said, you can't convince somebody of anything. If they don't want to believe it, it is not going to be believed.
Yeah. Cat saw something when I was taking my home. As I caught in the camera just by what I was taking pictures of my pup. But I said, Shelley's caught it in her own home. You caught one as well, and it doesn't matter what you say to people. I mean, I've got 3 or 4 photographs on my phone. I don't think I've posted them yet, but the power station that we've been to a few times, we've always had results there. But I think it was Sarah that noticed these I took, and it's sort of a green light in the background at the end of a corridor, and it moves about, and we don't have any. Well, she's froze again. I think her internet's very good. Don't move to America, folks, because the internet must be rubbish. But anyway, this green light moves about, and I think you see 3 or 4 different photographs. I will find them and I'll post them up on Facebook. But it was at night time, I think, and there was no reason for the light. There was no light source that could give that light. So she's away again. So that's 3 times in the one live that she's buggered off and left me. So I don't know. But she should be back. I hope she's back, because we're coming to the end of the live anyway. But that's the 3rd time I've been left. So in total, in the last 6 months, I've been left 4 times on a live myself. I'm glad you found that funny, Shelley. One night you and I will do a live and I'll just bugger off without warning and just leave you sitting. Like you did the other night when we were on, and you cut everybody out and it was just your face on the screen smiling. And I couldn't fix it because I don't know what you pressed all. But So she's left me on my own again, and there's no sign here as yet. Good job, good job. See if you're going to slag me out, Shelley. Get your spelling right, doll. I mean, good jog. I can't mind the last time I jogged apart from to the car. You know what I mean? Good jog, you can yap. Yeah, well, I can talk. I've been told before I don't know when to shut the beep up. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know. I think Kat's gone for good this time. Third time. Is that a third time or the fourth time? I've lost count. No, third time she fucked off and left me. Excuse the French, but it's after 10. So I guess we can, we don't usually swear in this channel, but when your teammate, shall we say, buggers off and leaves you 3 times in the one live, there's not a lot you can say about it, is there? Because you're sitting here looking like a wet turkey, basically. And, that's about it. So what we'll do, folks, is I would say Kat will hang on to her for a couple of seconds after the live, but there's no point in that because she's already buggered off. So it's just me. So I'm going to end this live just now because we've been on an hour and a half. Either that or I'm going to start singing. So I think it's in everybody's best interest for me just to shut the hell up and finish the live. We are back tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. Karen Perkins with Shelley. I sent a picture of my daughters on Sunday. That is odd, Kathy. What I'll do, Kathy, is I'll look you up on Facebook and I'll add you on Facebook and you can send it to me on Messenger. That way, that should work, I think. I'm kind of thick when it comes to tech, but I'll get that sorted out for you, though. I will get that sorted out as soon as I come off the live. Do not fret. Do not fret, pet. And that rhymes. Do not fret, pet. But we're back tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, with Shelley, who's in the chat. She'll be here. And Karen Perkins will be back for her book corner. Then Sarah and I are doing Thursday, I think it is. Thursday or Friday, we're doing Parapole. We bring back Parapole. It's something we started when we first started it last year. We're going to just choose a subject. Sarah and I will talk about it a wee bit, and then we take everybody's opinion on it, whether they believe it or not, whatever. It's totally open to opinion. It's kind of a debate, but it's not a debate because there's nobody here to argue with. So, people can put their comments in the chat and maybe disagree with us, which is fair enough. It won't be the first time people have disagreed with us, but hey-ho, can I agree 100% of the time, as I said to Kat? I really don't think she's coming back, by the way. I think she's gone. I think she is gone. So that's Karen Perkins tomorrow night, Sarah and me. Then on Saturday, we're out for a big investigation. And a week on Saturday, we have Karen Perkins with our witchcraft team. She's coming, Kat's coming back just as well, because I was just about to bug her off. Here she's here.
We've got a thunderstorm coming in, so it kicked out my internet.
Now that's what I'm going to.
Yeah, I shouldn't be on too awfully long because it's really getting black out there. So
you missed me singing.
I shouldn't be on the computer too long.
You missed me singing.
Yeah.
I'm only kidding. I wasn't singing. I was just putting that for anyway, Kat, because I thought you'd left me for good. You know what I mean?
No, the internet because I have to use the Wi-Fi on my phone when we've got a lot of clouds rolling in, like the thunderstorm is rolling in. It kicked me out of the internet altogether. So just a moment or so, but I have to get off the air anyway.
We'll wrap it up there
I don't
then.
like to be on the computer when it's storming.
Hi, Harry. Bye, Harry.
Well,
Harry was here. He's away. That was quick.
Well, I do appreciate your having me on here, and I hope some of the information about a few of the interesting haunted airfields and some of the hauntings and everything that are associated with them, people found interesting.
Well, I did. As I said earlier on, it's something I've never ever looked into. Is haunted airfield. I know I've seen programs and that on TV and stuff, but I've never actually sat and studied them. So I did enjoy listening to them. But you will be back. Don't worry. I've got plenty of plans in the pipeline for you, my dear. Don't you worry. You won't be sitting idle,
Okay,
as they say.
appreciate it.
So I'll
Okay.
keep you be said after we come off. Thank you, Kat and Baldy. Welcome, Justin. I'll settle you. I'll settle you on Saturday face to face. I mean, face to face.
Thank you, everybody.
So take care, everyone. We see you tomorrow night at 7 o'clock with Karen and Shelley for Karen Book Corner. So take care for now. Bye.